Stephen. Hi, Sarah. Good afternoon. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can
Yes,
hear you.
ma'am.
Good
Okay.
afternoon. Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Hello? Hello? Um, hello? Can
I
anyone
can
hear
hear.
me?
Yes.
All right, all right. Um,
Can anybody hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Good afternoon, Sarah. Good afternoon, Stephen. Good
We
afternoon,
are
man. We'll be starting in a jiffy once people start, also start admitting people. So thank you for spending your Sunday afternoon with me. It's nice to also meet you guys. I know that I've not officially met everyone. So
Recording in progress. In progress. In progress. In progress. In progress.
Let's just wait for them to join the call. Let's just keep waiting for them. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone.
good afternoon.
We're about to start. Let's just wait for a few more persons to join the call. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. You're welcome to today's webinar titled Winning of the Field, Intellectual Property Law and Smart Deal Making in Sports. So before we start, I would love someone to lead us in the opening prayer. Can anyone lead us in an opening prayer? Mr. Divine, you can take the prayer. Divine Robert. Divine Robert, you can take the prayer.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Hello?
We can hear you. We can hear you. We can hear you.
Hello?
We can hear you, sir.
Hello?
Okay. It seems he's not hearing us, so let's just continue. So, we're very excited to explore speakers to enlighten us on that. Our first speaker is Mr. Steven. Mr. Steven is Mr. Steven is a sports governance professional with expertise in sports integrity, law management, and governance, with a strong focus on intellectual property, sports technology, esports, and image rights. He has also contributed to governance frameworks for emerging sports esports structures, including work on national league development and Nigeria's national partner status for the inaugural Esports Nations Cup. So, Mr. Steven, the floor is yours, sir, for the next 20 minutes.
Okay. Can you hear me? Hello?
Can I hear you, sir?
Okay. So let me just. Okay. Can you can see my screen, right?
See it.
Hello?
We can see it, sir.
Yes, I
Okay.
can see.
Okay. So basically I'm here to talk about esports and its intersection with intellectual property, right? And well, the first thing I just what I wanted to, kind of get out on this call is esport. If you want to like say what is esports, right? In just simple terms, it is about bringing competitive structure, like competition structure, to video games. That's how you can just kind of um will I say describe it. And depending on who you ask, people can say, well, esports is a sport. Some people still debate, or it's not a sport. But I think for the purpose of this call, I want to call it a sport. And so the thing about esports, which is an emerging sport in today, is that it's one of the few sports where just by interacting with the sport, you get to interact with intellectual property from the get-go, right? So I will give an example. You pick up your football, you if you pick up your football, you go to your neighborhood, like your neighborhood field or anything. At that moment, you really don't interact with intellectual property per se, in terms of, yeah, I mean the ball you're kicking, maybe there's intellectual property around it, but in it at its core, you're just playing football with your friends, really not so much intellectual property. And that's just because like the game of football itself is not for anyone to claim, ownership, the game itself. So it's now when you have FIFA creating product like World Cup, Club World Cup and all those things, that you now have intellectual property around those products that FIFA creates. But that's different in the case of esports, because the moment you pick up a game and you sign up and you start to play the game, you already interacting with intellectual property, and that's by signing up accepting the term of service and term of use that most of these games include. So basically, I don't know if any of you play video games here, right? When you sign up, there's this thing called a term of use or term of service, depending on the publisher, which outlines, several things that should, are prohibited or can be done as a result of the game. So these are the rules that first, when you step into the esports space, you have to be, familiar with, because it guides you as a player, it guides you as a legal professional, whatever it is. So in esports, you do not step into the field without first stepping into someone's IP, and the person's IP is the publishers of the game. So as law students who are getting to really understand this space, I think the first thing to be able to understand is the global esport chain, because from there you can now understand, okay, how does this whole relationship flow, and at what point can it be contextualized towards you would see the chain. But for the purpose of your understanding, in terms of you want to be involved in space, you need to understand it first from the top. And the number one entity, or would I call them body, organization, that very, very important when it comes to sorry, why is it not moving? Oh, wait. Okay, sorry. When it comes to esport, are the game publishers. And again, I don't know if so many people play these games, but when we're talking about publishers, we're talking about the likes of Activision, Riot Games, Garena. So these are the companies or entities that make rules or that have complete ownership over the intellectual property of the video games that they publish. And of course, sometimes game publishers are different from game development companies, because sometimes people like to mix them together, right? In some instances, they are both. They are the same, but like for example, for Call of Duty right now, the game publishing company is called Activision, right? But depending on the edition, some Call of Duty edition is created by a company called Sledgehammers. So sometimes it's always also good to understand this distinction, but really most times it's just okay to understand that the game publishers are in charge of the intellectual property. Now, what do they own, right? These game publishers own the game IP, the asset, live ops control, and so I will just deviate a bit into the intellectual property in the game itself, because it helps to now be able to contextualize what exactly these publishers own, right? So I'm sure maybe depending on the stage you are in terms of your intellectual property studies, you know that when it comes to copyright in video games, right, you can't own copyright in the game genre itself. So let me give an example. If there are so many types of game genre, there's mobile games, so it's multiplayer online battle arena games. There are games called close circuit combat games. So for example, in a close circuit combat game, you typically start a game with something called a UAV recon, which is like a drone on top that goes around to scope where your enemies are, and where you can have an advantage. And then because it's close combat, so it's usually in an enclosed place like a warehouse, just somewhere very enclosed. So there are so many close combat circuit games. So you can't create a game based on those rules and say, oh, I own intellectual property to UAV recon, for example. No, that is something that is general to the close circuit combat genre itself. However, what these game publishers have intellectual property over is the uniqueness of their game. If it's a closed circuit combat, so what characters are you developing? How is the environment designed? Are you designing it in a very peculiar way? So, if you understand that, now bring it into the game itself. So, meaning that those uniqueness in those unique features in the game are what these game publishers have intellectual property over. So, and that is where esports then came into play, which is these publishers now create something called competitive circuits to be able to, kind of build competition, to be able to kind of build competition around their games, right? So that's where you have esports. Now, um, there are two ways in which these publishers actually operate their competitive circuit so that they can be able to so that these two ways, these two competitive circuit format would help you to be able to understand how well like IP really flows in the esports space, and also to contextualize it to your Nigerian setting, right? So there's the publisher run circuit and there's the third party organization run circuit. So for the purposes of this webinar, I'll be calling it 3PTOs because that's what we call it in the space. So 3PTO, third party tournament organization. For the publisher run circuit is pretty much straightforward, which is the publishers themselves run this competitive circuit. So an example is Riot Games. Riot Games organize their own competitive circuit around League of Legends, Valorant, team fight tactics, and a whole lot. But really, where the complexity of IP comes in is when you have to involve 3PTOs in your competitive circuit. Because now, why that is interesting is on one side, the publishers have their own intellectual property in the game, right? Like I've said, in the term of use and term of service that they tend to protect. And these 3PTOs also have their own intellectual property to protect, because if you are going to operate a competitive circuit, there has to be broadcast, there has to be content creation, there has to be streaming, and a whole lot of things. All of these things are where intellectual property also intersect with what these 3PTOs would have to do. So, like I've said, there are two companies, two entities. You have the three PTOs. So these are the three like very, very big 3PTOs right now in the space: ESL, Blast, and PGL. These are three companies that operate competitive circuits for different game publishing company. And so you can see now the two conflicting, not conflicting interests, but like two interests that has to go hand in hand, right? Because the publishers, they own the game themselves, right? So the source code, the characters, the map, the music, brand marks, in-game asset, while these 3PTOs own the gameplay, graphics, observer decks, and a whole lot of things. So they have to create ways to be able to, one, protect the interest of the publishers in that game, right? That's the IP, their IP interest, and two, to protect their own intellectual property that they would eventually be creating as a result of this competitive circuit. So just to jump right in, one of the ways that these publishers, or these 3PTOs, sorry, protect their IP, and also the IP of these publishers is what we call co-streaming guidelines. So co-streaming basically is where there is a central hub like a Twitch, like a YouTube, or these days Kick, that is streaming these games, right? This tournament, this competitive circuit, and then they then allow streamers to then take this live stream, put it on their own platform, and add, maybe analysis, chat engagement, and a host of other things. Now, this co-streaming, just by explaining it, you already understand that there are going to be three layers of IP to be protected. Remember, the first one, the publisher IP in the game. Second is the 3PTO IP, in the content they are creating, the broadcast and everything. Now you are adding co-streaming guideline, which is the streamers, because by putting it on their own platform and also, adding innovativeness around the analysis, the cuts, the clips, and everything. They are also, there's also some IP to be protected in that instance. So there are 3 layers, and that's where, one, the co-streaming guideline comes in. So the there's there's also a 4th layer, which is, where the tournament participation agreement comes in, right? So you have players that would have to play in this tournament, you have to probably you definitely have to use their image, you have to use their footage, posting and all these things, right? So for example, if somebody performs like an in-game streak or something that is record breaking. For example, if you play Call of Duty, there's something called kill streak. The current world record, I think, is about 16. If you then have a kill streak of 22, that's groundbreaking. So the question you ask yourself is, who has right to that footage of that player participating in a competitive circuit organized by the 3PTO based on a game published by the game publisher? Who has exclusive footage, exclusive right to that footage of a 22 kill streak, which is a world record? So this is what, and among so many other things, that this tournament participation agreement has to be able to, define and, draft well to be able to allocate. So, yeah, I wanted to make sure that in all of these talks, I was able to, contextualize it to the Nigerian setting. So this is already becoming a thing in the Nigerian space. So just recently in February, a game publisher called Garena, which published the game Free Fire, organized their first ever LAN event in Nigeria, and they did it in conjunction with a 3PTO in Nigeria called 10 and 80, right? So you can already imagine that this is already becoming a thing that is going to be useful in the space, because now publishers are getting interested. So not just even Garena, even Krafton that publishes Player Unknown Battlegrounds mobile game, they are also currently, doing an event in Nigeria. A lot of publishers are beginning to take interest in the country. So this is a dynamic that, is going to be really interesting. And, for, professionals that really understand these dynamics and the flow between the game publisher and now the 3PTO and also down to the players, you will be able to offer, well, I say services in this area, for example. So, one other thing I wanted to mention is, when it comes to image right usage in the space, well, there is the common rule. I always joke around with people in the traditional sports space and say, well, the way image right works in the traditional sports space is different from the way it works in esport, because there's this thing called the collective roster rule in traditional sport, where if you have a club sponsor, you can't use the personal image of a player in a way that it shows like he's endorsing that that club sponsor, except if there's a separate agreement to that effect. So typically, if you have Etihad, a sponsor for Manchester City, you can't just use Erling Haaland without having a personal agreement to that effect. However, it's quite different in the case of esport, because there's this thing called solo esports title like EAFC, Trackmania. And so if a sponsor, for example, wants to have an arrangement with the Trackmania team, for example, how then do you structure an image right deal to then factor that solo format, which again, there is the collective roster rule, and then you have the solo format. So there has to be innovative, reasoning around that image right agreement structuring. So yeah, so that's basically it around the collective roster rule when it comes to image right, because this will also be useful, when you're either working with the 3PTOs or you're working with an esports team, for example, and then this is presented So I wanted to give this as an example. And so, for example, you have in front of you now is a picture of a player, a EFC player, right? This could be a wrong example of how to use the image of a player because he's the only one for his team that plays EFC. And then you have a club sponsor. If you use this as it is, you might have some problems, especially factoring that collective roster rule. So just to round off, because I can see that I'm almost close to my time. As Nigerian students that you want to be involved in the esports space, like I've mentioned, it's an emerging space, it's growing. More publishers are beginning to show interest in the continent and in Nigeria. First thing is to have an interest, at least some type of interest in games, some type, because it really helps. Sometimes you come up with issues. Because I remember this collective roster rule, it was just as a result of me understanding the difference between solo formats and then understanding how the collective roster rule came up. And I was like, there's a problem that needs to be addressed here. So you need to have some type of interest in video games. And then that interest leads you into reading the term of service, reading the term of use to be able to understand some of these rules. And yeah, when you see an esport competitive circuit, be curious about the contract, the guidelines. For example, some of these 3PTOs before each tournament, they always drop their co-streaming guidelines. You can read about this and understand how this is being structured. Every interaction in the esports space leads back to intellectual property. Like every single interaction, from the publishers to the 3PTOs to the players, even to the fans, it leads to IP. And the last but not the least is everything that you want to do, try to contextualize it to your local settings, like I did with the presentation. And yeah, that's it. That's it for me. Thank you very much. Yep.
Thank you very much, Mr. Steven, for that insightful presentation. Our next speaker is Mrs. Malik. Miss Malik. Oyiza Malik Esquire is a legal practitioner with expertise in gaming and entertainment law. She serves as head of legal and compliance at TradaBet, where she oversees regulatory compliance, licensing, and governance within gaming operations. Her experience spans regulatory advisory and contract drafting, policy implementation, and engagement with regulatory authorities. She is committed to promoting transparent and accountable gaming practices. She will be speaking on gaming law. Mrs. Malik, over to you, ma'am.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for this opportunity, Madam Rita. I feel honored and privileged to be part of this conversation. So when people think about gaming, they often think about entertainment, but behind every game platform, betting system is a complex legal structure, and it sits between the intersection of gaming law and intellectual property. And apart from that, we would have licensing requirements, compliance obligation, advertising restriction, and responsible gaming policies. But for the sake of this webinar, I would like to restrict gaming law to intellectual property and careers that students can actually dive into. So, understanding the intersection between gaming law and intellectual property, they are deeply connected actually. And as we all know, every gaming platform relies on intellectual property in the sense that your software and codes, they are protected by copyright. Your brand names and logos, you trademark them. And for game formats, you make use of game secrets. But because we have a lot of betting companies that they don't build from the scratch, they make use of service providers. That way, they don't own the full right to it. Those service providers, they own the full right to whatever is happening on the platform. That's why they have the service level agreement on.
Sorry, ma, we can't hear you again. Just please hold on for a few seconds.
Oh my God. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I don't know I was muted. I'm really, really sorry. So where did you stop
It's
hearing me?
fine.
Like, you did not hear me all through.
Just
Yeah,
5 minutes
we can hear
after
you.
your listening, stop hearing you. After you started, 5 minutes after. So just continue. Thank you, ma.
I'm so sorry. So I was saying gaming law and intellectual property are deeply connected. Every gaming platform relies on intellectual property, and we have the software and codes. So I was trying to explain that we have some companies, big gaming companies that build from the scratch. So when you build from the scratch, you are going to trademark your software and the code, the brand names. Of course, whether you are building from the scratch or not, you trademark your brand names and logo in order not to allow all these illegal operators making use of them. Then also we have, like, everybody has different game formats. The original owners of those games can trademark it. And at the same time, gaming is heavily regulated. We have the licensing requirements, compliance obligations, advertising restrictions, responsible gaming policies. For licensing requirements, it is a whole lot. For we have different regulations for different states. In Lagos State, the Lagos State Lotteries and Gaming Authorities, they're the one in charge of anything that has to do with gaming and betting in Lagos State. While we also have in other states that had accepted gaming and betting, but not all states in Nigeria is not all states in Nigeria are actually practicing are actually.
Ma, we can't hear you again. Miss Malik, we can't hear you, ma. Okay, from what our first speaker has said, does anyone have any question to ask? Does anyone from the audience have any question to ask?
Hello.
I
Hello.
can hear you.
I don't know what is happening. When did you start? When did you stop hearing me?
Just continue from where you stopped, ma.
You know what? Just give me a few minutes. Let me make use of another system because I don't know. I don't know if it's from my end or it's from your end.
It should be from your network.
I'm so sorry. Please, where did you stop hearing me? Where should I start from?
Just continue from where you stopped.
So I was talking about the fact that why does the field matter in Africa? The gaming industry in Africa, particularly in Nigeria, is growing rapidly. And to talk about growth, it brings about the legal challenges. Who owns the platform? Are operators properly licensed? Is user is user data protected? Are games compliant with the local laws? This creates a strong demand for lawyers who understand the technology and intellectual property. Then I'll go straight to the career opportunities in gaming law. If you're interested in this field, you can actually explore these fields. First of all, you can look into the regulatory and compliance advisory that's working for gaming companies to ensure they meet the licensing and legal requirements because it is a whole lot. It's not something that they can do on their own or they can just use a person to do it. It is a whole structure. So you can actually consider the regulatory and compliance team. Also, you can also consider the intellectual property law, where also you can choose to fall into drafting and commercial law. That's drafting of agreements, operators and software providers. What I explained earlier while we were starting this talk, I spoke about software providers. Those ones are the ones that, because betting companies, some of them cannot build from scratch because it is capital intensive. So what they do is they look for service providers. That's what they do. They have the platform already, they just incorporate it to their own system. And it is highly regulated because in Nigeria, if you want to make use of service providers, you'd have to link it with the Lagos State Lotteries and Gaming Authority. They have to be able to say that everything is going fine. So there are requirements for that. You can choose to fall into that space. That's contract drafting and commercial law, where you talk about operators and software providers, gaming companies and advertising, then platforms for users. Also, you can choose to go into in-house counsel where you manage legal risk, compliance, partnership, and regulatory engagement. That's for upcoming betting companies that do not really have the money to get a full team. So you can also consider going for in-house counsel. Then also you can consider going for um tech and advisory. That's for those data protection, AI integration, and platform governance. It is another field entirely, and it is a field that it is emerging at the moment, and people are not really looking into it. So you can choose to look into that and build a field around that. The skills that you need to succeed. To stand out in the field, you must have more than legal knowledge. You must have a strong understanding of technology and digital platforms, knowledge of intellectual property rights, and awareness of regulatory frameworks. Why you can also choose to get yourself involved in the business development of the company. That's, you can choose to intern in all these gaming companies, betting companies, consultancy companies, whereby they are heavily dealing with gaming and betting. So to have a full grasp of what the industry is all about, and you have to pay attention to details in contracts. Now, my advice for students is that students that are interested in this gaming industry, in this gaming field, you should start reading, because I feel like you are more privileged because you've already taken it to build a field, a profession in this particular field. Unlike me, I did not, when I was in school, I did not know that I was going to fall into that field. I've always knew that I was going to be in the entertainment industry, but I wasn't sure of where I was looking into. But now that you have an edge in this, because you're trying to create a fit for yourself at the early stage, and it is very, very good. So you start reading about gaming regulations in your jurisdiction. For instance, you're in Rivers, get to know, is it legal in Rivers State? I know in Rivers State gaming is actually legal. So you can choose to intern in the regulatory with the regulatory body of River State, in order to get a full grasp of what the law is like in Lagos State. And one thing about the gaming industry, the laws are always evolving. Every day we have new laws, we have new things to look at. Not until recently, as at February, they just introduced the withholding tax, and I would not like to bore you with those legal jargons or the jargons of the industry, because you might not understand it. Then you can take courses or certification in intellectual property law. Take courses on Coursera, go online, you can take courses on DCP, take different courses online that can help you in the field. Also, follow the industry trends too as well. Like sport betting, don't just go to the platform, try to know what it's all about. Try to look for associations like what you are doing now, being in the intellectual property club. It is a very good step to make. Look for associations that are doing what you really want to do. Then seek for internship with law firm, gaming companies, regulators. Build a niche early. The field rewards specialization. It is not just you trying to be a jack of all trade, master of none. When you know that you want to get into the field as early as possible, you just try to build a niche early around it. And I would like to confirm if you can hear me. Please, if you can hear me, can you just like send a reaction or an emoji so I can know that you can hear me or we're on the same page. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, ma'am.
So I would like to say that apart from all this advice that I've given, whatsoever thing you find your hands doing, you do it well. Because for me, I did not just stumble on gaming law like that. It was just while I was working, and through recommendations, like, oh, is that you can do this, blah blah. I know you are able to do this. You're able to do. My first gig came from through referral. Then afterwards, after delivering a very good job, I keep getting referrals from other people. And also believe in yourself, believe that you can do it and you're going to do it. Have the good mindset towards it. Don't say that, oh, because it's a new area or because of I'm a lady, I cannot go into this field or do that. Just, you never can tell where apart you're going to find yourself tomorrow. So in everything you do, just put in your best in it. Sometimes it feels like you are not where you want to be, you are not doing the right thing. Just keep at it. With time, it's going to reward you. And also, I'd like to say that in terms of your spirituality too as well, if you believe in God, like for instance, I believe so much in God. I believe in God, and I believe that the spiritual controls the physical. So in everything I'm going to do, I would always put God first before any other thing, and God is going to lead your paths right. He is the one that make prince and kings. So whatsoever thing you find yourself doing, do it and do it well. And if it is in the gaming field, if it is in any field at all, just ensure that you are giving it your best shot. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ma, for that insightful lecture. At least we have learned about gaming law, and thank you for your advice to students and IP enthusiasts. So our final speaker is Mrs. Chiamaka. Chiamaka Anaku is a senior associate at Sporthouse LP and a seasoned legal practitioner and arbitrator with over 15 years experience. She advises and represents clients across sports and intellectual property, including athletes, footballers, agents, and clubs. She has secured decisions from FIFA tribunals on player status, transfers, and contractual disputes. She also serves as a pro bono panel member of Sports Resolution. She's a strong advocate for the use of ADR in creative and sports industries. Mrs. Chiamaka will be representing on dispute resolution in IP and sports disputes. So, Mrs. Chiamaka, please take the floor. Just give us some few seconds to get on the call. Okay, this Chiamaka is having some network issues, so we will move right to the question and answer session. So we'll be opening the floor for questions. If you have any question, please indicate by raising your hand with the emoji, and I'll invite you to unmute your microphone. Does anyone from the audience have questions? Okay, me, I have a question too. And this question is directed to Mr. Steven. So my question is, how can athletes, you spoke about, how can athletes in IP protect themselves against AI deepfakes? Mr. Steven, please, how can athletes protect themselves against AI deepfakes?
Well, the thing about that is that would generally center around like likeness, name, image, NIL likeness, which there isn't like specific provisions for. So what you well, some countries are coming up with personality law, like I know Denmark is. So right now you can protect your face. So what I know athletes can do is more of the technology side, just um basically there's a scheme for it. You can just like write to all of these technology platform, like how you have like rights to be forgotten, for example. You can There's a right to be forgotten where you can send like a request or something to like all the Google, all the search engines, and they wipe everything about you on the internet. So similarly, something like that, there's a request format for all of these AI platforms, which you can now say, I don't want my face to be used as training models, anything. So that's just the only way. But legally, it's a gray area. It's something that it's currently developing. So really, on right now, only I think Denmark really has like a personality law that they are developing. To the best of my knowledge, I don't really know any other regions, but it's particularly around image, name, image, and likeness. So Nigeria, unfortunately, we don't. Not even just Nigeria, most countries, most regions, even the EU doesn't really have like an image right law. But yeah, technologically, that's how you can protect, right? To write to those platforms to say, I don't want my image to be used for any training models or whatnot. So yeah.
Thank you so much, sir, for
Yeah.
that answer. So I saw Mr. Bright Obimba's hand up. So please, can you ask your question, Bright Obimba?
All right, good afternoon. Am I heard or am I being
Yes, we
heard?
can hear you, sir.
All right, so actually, my question is for the first speaker. He was talking about the role of the publishers and the 3PTO. Now, you he said that they work hand in hand and they don't swallow each other. But is there any way publishers can actually control? Because if these people are the ones in charge of some part of the game. Is there any way publishers get to control? Because I believe the intellectual property lies with the publishers, and in case of conflict, is there any way the publishers get to control or have an upper hand when it comes to their game?
Mr.
Okay.
Stephen, the question is directed to you.
Yeah. Okay. So that's actually a very good question. I wanted to answer it by giving you an example, right? So just a second. Do I have time? Okay, just a second. Okay. So um so this is one of the pre-PTOs, their website. You can, check it out really in your own time if you're trying to understand intellectual property, right? So this is ESL, their code streaming guideline for the CS2 game. So it's called Counter Strike 2. Now, these are all of the, you know, um, guidelines. You can see what they are saying: uninterrupted experience, the gameplay, the mandatory feeds, approved platform, code of conduct, professionalism. All of this is to protect their intellectual property, right? Which is developed on the main game. Now, the publishers are what we call alpha and omega for this, so they still have control, and that's why even this policy, you see typically in policies like this, when you go to the end, the last place, you can you see what's written at the note? Can you see what I highlighted? Yeah. So every policy, whatever it is still somehow subjugated, or still subject to that main IP by the publishers. So this is how, Bright, this is how that relationship is still maintained, and this is how the publishers still maintain control. So this particular clause you are seeing here is the, what's it called, the override clause, right? So anything you are doing, if that intellectual property right of the publisher via their TOS or their TOU is interfered with or violated, this is the override clause to make them gain control again. So yeah, I don't know, did that answer your question, Brian?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay, does anyone have any question again from the audience? I have a question for Ms. Malik. I see someone is using their hands. Okay, Miss Malik, please. In gaming operations, how do intellectual property rights, especially in software branding and content, affect licensing? Miss Malik,
How does what?
how does intellectual property rights, especially in software branding and content, affect licensing?
No, first of all, for your software, if you are building from the scratch, then you would have to protect it. Because if you don't protect it, someone else can make use of the same thing you are making use of. Like they can clone it, right? How does it affect licensing? It is part of the requirements, because if you are going to have a betting company, there are list of requirements, and trademarking your platform, your documents. You might not have the certificate at that particular point in time, but your acceptance letter will pass for it. So you would actually need it while getting your license. Otherwise, the license will not be given to you. Did that answer your question?
Yes, ma, you did. Thank you very much, ma'am.
All right, thank you.
So does anyone from the audience have any question to ask? Just one last question. Divine Robert, please ask your question. Unmute your mic.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, ma. I have a question. You were talking about us taking as many courses as we can get to get more qualified. I want to ask, how important do you think it is to have a master's or PhD degree in an IP-related field? Or is it just about getting these certificates to know how to do it, or certification from a university, like a master's degree, if that is so important or not?
Okay, thank you so much for this question. Regarding having a PhD, having a master's in intellectual property, I would believe that you're an aspiring lawyer, right? Divine, can you hear
Yes,
me?
ma.
Okay.
Yes, ma.
So for lawyers, I would say for a fact that you don't really need to have your master's, you don't really have to have PhD to get a very beautiful deal, to get good deals. Like it depends on how you carry yourself, depends on what you know, how you've invested in knowledge. So getting this knowledge is for you to be able to answer, to be able to reach the needs of your clients, to meet the needs of your clients, right? And because I can tell you for a fact, I've known a lot of people in the industry that don't even have a master degree and are earning in the dollars, thousands of dollars. I kid you not. She doesn't have master's degree, but she earned in dollars, and it was through referral. So it was not even the case that she had to do interview. Depending on what you want. If you want to climb the professional ladder and having to go into school, like you want to teach, of course you need masters, you need your PhD, you need to be advanced in your level of certifications. But I'm telling you to do certification because to acquire that knowledge. So when you speak, you'll be speaking from the place of you know what you are saying, and not from the place of guessing. You're not doing guesswork, right? Depending on when you can lay your hands on written and get your hands dirty with the work. Did I answer your question, Divine?
Yes, ma. Yes, ma. Thank you, ma.
You're welcome.
Okay, so like we all know, today is World IP Day and the theme is IP and sports. So I would like for the speakers to give us a general comment on the World IP Day in relation to the topic, because the topic, it complements what we are celebrating. So I would like for the speakers, Ms. Malik and Mr. Steven to give us general comments on the topic, starting from Mr. Steven.
Okay. So, well, sport is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and IP is like, if you drive a car, there's the mechanical side and there's the electrical side. I don't even know. I think IP is both, because I remember when we had to, like, in a program I did years ago, and we had to really understand the mechanism just behind the Olympics itself, like getting the clearance for the music when they do the performance and everything. It's really a whole machinery. So if you're somebody that wants to get involved in the sport industry, it's inevitable that you actually become, really conversant with all of these rules. And just by even being a part of this call, that's a very good first step, because I remember when I was also in university, I was really passionate about sport, and everything I did, down to even the electives I took, was guided by that. And thankfully, let's just say thankfully, post undergrad, those courses are now, especially IP, is what it's now really serving me well. So on today that we celebrate World IP Day and sport, it's really, really important. IP is the engine which sport runs on. You see a league like the NBA, when they do their evaluation every year, with their media right deal, their last media right deal was over $1 billion. Why is it over $1 billion? IP, NFL to the same thing, to the English Premier League, So sport runs on intellectual property. And so it's really, really important that if you want to be involved in the space, you take it seriously, and, doing courses, coming for events like programs like these, connecting with professionals, taking innovative first step. I remember I got involved in esport and IP in general right from when I was in my undergrad. And one of the first things that I did, in conjunction with my friends, was we drafted constitutional documents and IP frameworks for the then federation and federation association, whatever it is. And it was the start of the thing that really now propelled me to now be doing the things that I'm doing now. So, and that was in my 400 level when we did that. And so yeah, thank you for having me, and also thank the host, Miss Rita, for also inviting me. And yeah, I wish everyone, we all meet at the top. Thank you.
Sorry, we can't hear you again.
No, I finished my comment. I said thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. So, Ms. Malik, do you have any comments on today's theme in intersection with the IP World Celebration Day?
Yes. First of all, I'd like to thank the host and everyone on this call for inviting me. And all I would like to say about the topic for the year IP, World IP Day, is that you cannot do anything without IP. You cannot do anything without IP, and the world relies on IP. Look at 5-10 years from now, AI regulating almost everything if it has not started already. And you have to put preference in learning what the IP what is all about. And for lawyers, if you want to incorporate a company for your clients, you would have to confirm from them, is the name be trademarked? Is the name available? Because it will surprise you to know that the name that you're trying to register, it has already been taken. So when you own your brand, when you own everything, making money from it is going to be easy peasy. Like it's going to be very easy for you. And for lawyers, when you know your onions, you do what you're supposed to do, your due diligence. Trust me, the sky is just the starting point and not even the limit. So thank you, and I cannot wait to celebrate everyone. Thank you so much.
Let's just give some seconds to our last speaker who will be joining us very soon. Does anyone from the audience have any questions to ask? If you have any questions, kindly raise your hands. Mr. Divine Robert, I see you raising your hand. Do you have any question?
Right, hand.
Right. Okay.
All right, thank you
Right,
very
please
much.
take a
Thank you
question.
very much. General question here, but first of
Please
all, we
take
are
your
talking
question.
about property. I wanted to ask, is esports going to be regarded as traditional sports, or is it going to be regarded as maybe a digital service at this point? Because um, if we are talking about major competitions now, and I just have the Olympics in mind. So, are we going to give the regulations we give or to traditional sports to esports? Like, are we going to regard esport as a traditional sport since it does not involve this will I say physical or we all know the way traditional sport is and the way it is regulated. So can we regard esports as traditional sports?
Yeah, Bright, that's a very interesting question, and um, I wish I wish you were in an esports forum. Like this question is like an atomic bomb. Like you just sort of, because it's what people like to sidestep, and but it's wait just Renan said yes. You can type Renan if you have a question. Um, so the thing is, depends on who you ask. Is esport a sport? Some will say yes, some will say no. Now, the argument on both sides, is pretty much substantial, right? On the side of whether it's a sport, people are saying, well, look at it. It has teams, it has viewership, it has some federation structure, sort of, right? It has all of these things that you typically want to see in a traditional sport. But if you go deeper into it, regulation becomes it's really hard to then regulate esport the way it is, right? Because one of the key requirements of sport, especially as it relates to Olympic sport, is um it has to be inclusive, it has to not promote monopoly. There's some requirement like that which doesn't really tally well with the way esport is being, developed, and even some of the rules, right? So, for example, the co-streaming thing that I mentioned is not really like how it is in traditional sport, because in traditional sport, what you have, let me give an example. You have the English Premier League has, of course, the right to its league, the broadcasting and everything. They sell, for example, this right to Super Sport for Africa, right? And then SuperSport can now look into it and come to Africa and say, okay, for Nigeria, I want to sell this right to this local station. For Ghana, I want to sell it to this local station. That's just how like broadcasting deals work. But that's not how it works in esport though, because the like we've said, these three PTOs own the right to their own competitive structure, right? So ESL, they operate the CS2 Counter-Strike space. So they own the right to their own space. So now they invite streamers to come on board to co-stream via the central hub, right? It's free. They don't charge these streamers anything, although that's becoming an argument also in the space. So back to just kind of answer your question, it's a yes or no answer because to some extent it is a sport, to some extent it's not if you're looking at it from an Olympic angle. And so sometimes when you bring the regulation of traditional sport, it doesn't fit most times. So, but sometimes it fits, sometimes it doesn't. So, for example, if you bring the no monopoly rule to esports, you're going to have a problem because esports runs on high digital like infrastructure, which not too many companies in the world maybe can provide. If you say you want to do your qualifiers on PlayStation, what other console can you really do? Because Xbox is not up to the power of PlayStation, for example. So only PlayStation right now is like the major console for this participation. So to that extent, you can apply the no monopoly rule in esport. So it's a yes or no answer. I don't know, Bright, did I answer your question? Right.
Thank you very much, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, so someone asked, he said, okay, my question is on IP in video games. I'm really interested in video games and in studying them. I discovered that in some jurisdiction, there are certain game mechanics that can be patented. For example, the dialogue wheel in the game Mass Effect, which was patented in 2006 and will be expiring in 2029. Okay, so I didn't want to really delve into like game development side because one is what I did for my thesis, and if I start to delve into it, that's my thesis in uni, and subsequently I've studied more about it, and so I'll just give you a light answer, right? So a lot of what you do in video games, like trademark, intersects with it, industrial design intersects with it, patent intersects with it. So yeah, it whatever patent applies is also applicable in Nigeria. And at least I think the only problem maybe you might have in Nigeria is just maybe the enforcement. But I think that's also pretty strong. But yeah, in terms of the registration, it is so what you're looking at is when you say game mechanics to be patented, what you're really talking about is like, so I assume what you're saying is patent design, right? So patent design is, that specific like design of the mechanics and everything. So yeah, it's obtainable in Nigeria, but again, I think the issue in Nigeria would just be like the enforcement side of it, which yeah, that differs, but yeah, it is. Yeah, I think I'm done with the questions. You're welcome. Any other question? Um, okay, okay. I guess just to add a little bit um about like the contextualization, right? And hello, can you guys hear me? Hello?
We can hear you.
Okay, okay. Um I don't know. Okay, they said the next speaker is about to join. Okay, just to help with the contextualization for Nigeria, and just because I wanted to add this to my presentation, but because of time, which is how to actually like kind of get involved or to take advantage of the space even as students right now. I think the first thing I would say is your mindset has to like kind of be in always a pro analysis stage, because I remember when I was in my second, third year, like no, my first year in uni, I always knew I wanted to work in sport, wanted to work in the intersection of law and sport. But my mindset was just watching Ronaldo or watching football without actually going deep into what the analysis around what I'm looking at is, right? So it only took me until my third year when I started to understand that, oh, when I'm watching a game and, for example, you have a betting sponsor for a football team, and then you have a Max Dowman that is 15 years old coming in without a betting sponsor on his shirt. What does that mean? Those kind of things is where you want to get to as a student, to start to be analytical and prove your, will I say, understanding of the space, right? So the answer is simple. Like, according to rules, like because Dowman is 15 years old, he cannot promote certain type of sponsor labels, which betting falls into that. So that's how IP coincides with betting in a way, right? So now you see Max Dowman. I know some of you are probably Arsenal fans. You see Max Dowman and you see maybe Arsenal is sponsored by a betting company, and then you don't see Max Dowman wearing that shirt. That gives you an analysis. So it tends to progress there, and then you tend to localize whatever you know at the international space, because before I got into the international space, right, the local space helped me to understand the international, because first you start to understand it from an international level, because then you can now domesticate and contextualize. But on practicing it in your local space would allow you to now be able to understand, okay, where this side applies in Nigeria and where it doesn't, and then cut out the side that doesn't apply in Nigeria, but still kind of understand it and practice what applies in Nigeria up until the point where you now get the opportunity to scale what you have to the international realm, and then you have more opportunities. So I assume after this meeting, you, if it's esports you're interested in, you get to know some of these players, some of these stakeholders, that are involved in this space, right? So currently, right now, as a part of my role, like the e-soccer league is currently ongoing. I have to watch the stream, for example, look at, okay, what is wrong IP wise, just even watching the stream, somebody already said something, which is, why is there one of the players was drinking was drinking water from a bottle water and there was no label on it. Now, why is that so? Because you can't promote a brand on a stream and that is IP rule. So that's a policy that has to be in place. So yeah, those kind of analysis is okay, what has to be in place. Okay, so I just got a message that the next speaker is in already. So over to you. Over to you, Sarah.
Jamaka, please, you can take the stage now. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Can I be heard? Rita, please confirm.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for holding forth, Stephen, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Rita, for inviting me as well. So I'm due to speak on dispute resolution in IP and sports dispute. And also because everyone all has held on for a bit, I'm happy to take questions as quickly as you have them so that I don't keep you for longer than you had prepared to be here. So I'm sure that it's already been said that sports is a multi-billion-dollar global industry. And because of all that money, there's a lot of disputes in sports. So I'll take that as something that we all agree on. And then just move into what the topic really is about today, dispute resolution in IP and sports. I'll also take it for granted. If Sarah is on, please, if you can just give a brief recap at some point about what the other speakers have said so that I don't go back and address what they have already said. So generally, sports disputes fall into three main categories, right? There are regulatory disputes, which include doping and eligibility. There are commercial disputes, which include sponsorships, broadcasting rights and licensing, which is where IP falls in, and employment disputes as well between athletes, clubs, coaches, agents, covering contracts, transfers, and terminations. So for this year, because the World IP Day is practically on innovations in sports, um, I'll just go through some of the IP disputes in sports and then we'll just go into innovations and the areas that we hope that there will be innovations. So mainly from cases that we've seen, most of the IP disputes in sports include image rights disputes, likeness of athletes, endorsements, branding, broadcasting rights. A bit of what we've seen happen in Nigeria with, I'm sure that some of us, if not most of us or all of us, can remember when DSTV had a monopoly for the English Premier Leagues and some of the other top leagues, and other broadcasters couldn't use it because it would be infringement of their own rights, and they could only access any of those rebroadcasts through DSTV, and then, they went to court saying that, I think it was even Bond that, took it up and said, oh no, you are monopolizing, other people should have access and be able to rebroadcast those games. But in the end, it was ruled that it was a private right, and then you can't tell a business how to run their rights. Internationally, those broadcast rights are put in boxes and they are costed. Like, oh, this is going to cost this amount. And then when you take it now depends on you. If you take it for a region, you now decide if people can rebroadcast from you and how much you're willing to sell it at. So those are kind of some of the disputes that come up for IP in sports. Then there's also trademark and merchandising, logos, kits, and brand identity. So I'm sure Stephen would have covered, esports and some of the disputes and the legal framework of that. So I wouldn't want to dwell on that. So I'll just go on to talk about dispute resolution generally and the kinds of mechanisms that are used in sports disputes. And hopefully, when I get questions, I'll know what areas that you people really are interested in to hear. But this is kind of like a general overview. So for what we may call innovation in sports dispute, because previously sports disputes were treated like every other dispute. They can go to national court and you adjudicate them there until you get judgment. You can appeal if you are not happy with the judgment and all that. So over time, regulatory bodies and federations and international organizations came up with their own dispute resolution mechanisms, which we can call innovations, because some like FIFA has their own tribunal, CAS for Olympics and generally other sports related disputes. Then we have private dispute resolution bodies as well. Those are innovations like Sports Resolutions UK, where I'm a member. They do ODR, that's online dispute resolution. Then specialized sports tribunals. Countries are encouraged, federations and member associations are encouraged to set up their own specialized tribunals to hear these disputes. Being that sports is something that has a set time, there's a period. So if you allow it to go to a regular court, it might last there until the person's career is over and without them getting any judgment. So that's why alternative dispute resolution is usually encouraged, right? So even though Nigeria doesn't have a specified sports arbitration tribunal sitting, but federations and different bodies have their own dispute mechanisms, right? The NFF has the NFF Arbitration Committee, which, even though in my own opinion, because I've appeared there as well, it's not a proper arbitration committee. And the arbitration institute in Nigeria is actually pushing to see if they can work together with NFF to set up a proper arbitration tribunal for football and possibly for a proper and well-managed sports tribunal for every sport generally to bring their disputes that will be handled by trained arbitrators, trained tribunal secretaries, and it will be strictly for sports, like a specialized court or tribunal for sports. Somewhere like Kenya, they already set up such dispute resolution body. So they have a sports tribunal. Also, mediation clauses are encouraged because places like the LMDC, Lagos Multi-Door Court, they don't have it yet, but they're encouraged to have like a sport, to add sports in their mediation session so that parties can include it in their contract and can also come there for mediation, same as other multi-door court houses across the country. So for now, what usually happens, so that I tie it into tangible examples that you can relate to as well. For now, what usually happens is, for example, in football, if a player has an issue with the club, let's say a Rangers or Enyimba player has an issue with the club. If the player is not a Nigerian player, like if it's a Ghanaian player, then the player can take the case to FIFA tribunal, because it's taking that as an international case, being that the player is not a Nigerian player. But if the player is a Nigerian player and is Enyimba or Rangers is within the Nigerian Federation, then it doesn't have any international color to it. So you cannot go to FIFA. So what that does is that it raises that issue of that people that are playing in the same team, don't have what's the word now? Don't have a level playing, an equal rights situation. It's now like an equal rights situation. An international player can go to FIFA, whereas a Nigerian player can. What it means actually in practice, which is what we've seen a lot, at least in my own practice, is that Nigerian players, because all these clubs, they have all these issues, right? And then the committee here, or the dispute resolution that they have access to here, is either the courts or the NFF arbitration committee, which some of them might feel that, oh, they will not get justice there because somehow it's the same people that are running things there. So what this does is that it makes players, like players of Nigerian descent, to go to play in other countries, even if it's just Niger, Guinea, any of all these countries that have professional football. So what that means is that when there's a dispute, they can go to FIFA because it gives it that international color, in quotes, that allows FIFA to have jurisdiction. Then also, from what I've already said, there's delays that happen in regular courts, which means that if you take your case there, you might not have a decision as quickly as you'd like. Okay, there was a case that we had done a few years back that a Nigerian player, his club had suspended him. They were owing him for like 3 months. So he had written that, oh, they should pay him or he wants to terminate his contract. They didn't respond to him. So we had filed that action at FIFA. While we were waiting for the decision, another club scouted him and wanted to take him on. And then because that issue was still pending before FIFA, he couldn't get his player registration, like a player passport that he can take to the other club. So what we did is that there's this fast track arbitration or fast track decisions. Those ones, they can do that quickly. What we did is that, we filed an application and said, oh, this is the position. Can FIFA issue him that player registration and he can use at the other club? And we're able to get that sorted out. So imagine if it's in a regular situation or in a regular court, you might not be able to have such immediacy, because from the time you file the case, before the case is assigned, all those things, the club might have either moved on or found somebody else that does not have all that issues. So also at during the Olympics, there is usually a CAS ad hoc arbitration committee that is set up for the Olympics. So what it means is that for disqualifications, for any decisions that are made on field, it's taken to that CAS ad hoc arbitration committee, and decisions are made within 24 and 48 hours. So meaning that those arbitrators have to sit overnight and look at everything to give, because sometimes it's between the heat and the main event. So if you're saying, oh, if they've given a decision, like the referee or the people in charge have said, oh, this player is disqualified for doing so, and so, whatever, and the player is saying, no, that's not correct, they can go to that CAS ad hoc arbitration committee immediately, and then within 24 to 48 hours, they can get a judgment, which can mean that they can either continue participation or they are really disqualified based on whatever it is that happens there. So broadly, for IP protection, of course, sometimes we see issues of brand when it comes to kits and all these things. Usually, a club is kitted by a company. A player might sign, because players are allowed to sign for their boots. If you have a boot endorsement, a boot deal, so-called, if you have a boot deal, then it's allowed, even if your boot deal is from a different company. But if you don't have a boot deal, then the company that is kitting the club is going to take care of your boot as well. So some of those issues can come up when a player's contract is suddenly terminated, or there's a transfer, or the player terminates unilaterally and things like that. And then, issues of image, that the NIL now, name, image, and likeness, have come up a lot since inception of AI, using gaming and all these other things. So IP, as I'm sure that other speakers have already said, is like one of the one of the legs of the tripod that makes sports really commercially viable. IP is one of it because, as we know, broadcasting is a huge deal. Even now, with the inception of streaming, right? There's a lot of streaming companies buying into those broadcast rights, and then as there are streaming companies coming up to buy into those rights, they are also pirated, like streaming piracy. Like people are, what's that word? People are, I'm forgetting the word. People are like taking the content from another streaming company and showing on their own site illegally. So this has become, one of the big issues in recent times since streaming has come on. So I'm happy to take any questions that that might come up now. So just in a bit to tie up what I've already said. Okay, a bit of it just occurred to me that I haven't spoken about. So betting as well. We know that sports betting has become big, a lot bigger than it used to be in the past because of streaming as well, and online betting and real-time betting and all those things. And all these things have their own IP undertone, and they're related as well, which bring up their own IP issues, right? So sports disputes generally are between players and clubs. Esports disputes, which I'm sure Stephen would have spoken about, are between players and platforms or publishers that host those games. Betting on its own is usually based on, the users of those platforms, the operators. Then now there's now regulation because a lot of issues have come up. We've seen cases of what is that, underage betting. We've seen cases of breach of contract, right? Even though that is not IP related, but those are disputes that are sports related that come up from sports betting. And then we also have issues of integrity of even the platforms that are hosting this thing. And then we also see issues now because it seems like betting has, in our Nigerian parlance, betting has blown. So every day we see new betting companies coming up, and sometimes they infringe on the rights of each other by either using similar colors, similar logos, just to confuse consumers and users of these betting platforms, and just to get people, to hop up and down and just make a stop on their own betting company. So in conclusion, I'll just say that sports resolution. And then before I conclude, I would also like to say that I'm happy that I'm on like the audience are majorly students. because what it means is that for all these issues that you have heard today, you can start thinking about solutions towards it. That's where innovation really comes from, because these are not really just abstract things. These are things that people experience every day and you hear about, right? When it comes to IP, we know, okay, broadcasting is copyright protected, licensing, trademarks, and all that. So we kind of know the IP issues, IP related issues that happen in sports. And then how can we solve these problems that we have already noted, which is where innovation comes in. Because sometimes when the word innovation is used, it sounds like, oh, there must be one big thing, there must be like something brand new that we've never seen before. But some of these things are solutions, practical solutions to everyday issues that people have. For example, like the online dispute resolution that I talked about, the cases I've done before FIFA, I've never been to FIFA headquarters in Switzerland. But because you are able to do those, put your papers together, is evidence-based, document-based. You put your papers together and you send it to them. If there's a response, they send to you and you send your reply and they sit over it and give a decision, and FIFA is able to enforce. That it means that I don't need to move one step to get from, from filing the papers to hearing to decision. I don't, in fact, if it's like a room, I don't need to even have a big room or big office, meaning that it's something that anyone that has been trained or, gets some training or experience in that sector can handle. So same goes for any innovation you're thinking about, right? As students, the problems you see today or you hear people talk about are the places that you know that there's value in, right? Like when people keep talking about a particular problem, it means that the solution of that problem is valuable. So from what you've heard today, you can start thinking about it that, oh, what can I do in this sector? And also, I don't think it's something that people have to do individually. People can come together. Like I said, as students, people have the time, and as God will have it, quite innovative, So you can come together, and look at a few problems. How can we solve these problems? How do we think about, just ideas? And of course, you know that ideas are protected under copyright once it's put down into a tangible form. So I'll say that in conclusion, and I'll take any questions that I have at this time. Thank you very much for listening.
All right, thank you so much, Chamaka, for sharing your knowledge and expertise. Despite the network challenges you had, to still join us. So thank you so much for that. And I see that Malik is still on the phone. Thank you as well. I thought I saw Bright's hand. Bright, I don't know if you still want to ask your question or if Chamaka already answered it. You'd like to ask your question?
Yes, ma'am. I'd love to ask my question.
Okay, please do that in 30 seconds.
All right. Quick question here. My question is there no legal framework like state-made or national-made laws regulating sports? Because you've been talking about regulations, and it only borders on maybe bodies or sports organizations. There are no locally made laws or state-made laws that actually regulate sports and how it is run.
Okay, Bright, if I can understand your question, you're asking if there is no legal framework for regulation of sports, is that?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Okay. So the answer to that, the answer to that is there is. All right. Sports is a very heavily regulated sector. So there is, but the issue is that what I said there isn't is a proper sports tribunal um, to hear sports and sports related disputes. So each game, like football, is regulated by the rules, right? And even MPFL has its own framework of how the league is run and how play is regulated and all those other things. So for each sport like that, basketball as well, internationally regulated, and then here they have their own regulations that guide them. So each of those sports are regulated and have their rules and laws that guide them, even internationally. Do you understand? If you follow any of those sports, you know that there are rules for on-field play, off-field play, how athletes should behave for maybe sports like for things like athletics. Okay, so sports is heavily regulated, and everyone has their own laws and regulations that guide things. And then when there's a breach of any of those things, of course, that's why I said they can either go to national courts or specialized courts where they have it. So that's the answer to that question. Or if there's anything specific that you were trying to get at, then do let me know so that I can address that.
Okay, thank you very much, Shamaka. I believe that we have now come to the end of today's session. I want to say a big thank you to you.
I'm so sorry. I have a question. Please.
That I didn't see your hand, so
I'm so sorry. Can I ask?
yes,
Yeah.
in 30 seconds so that we can.
Good day, ma. My name is Marvelous Basi from River State University. I'm 100 level. My question is, as law gets more commercial, how do we protect athletes' rights without hurting the business side of the game?
Sorry, can you say that again? I didn't hear the first thing you said.
As law gets more commercial, how do we protect athletes' rights without hurting the business side of the game?
Well, protecting athletes' rights is part of what even increases the value of the game, if you understand what I mean. Like, let me make practical examples now. For example, the English Premier League wouldn't have been as big as it is if people are seeing that players are being exploited or players are not paid well or their rights are being infringed and all those things. Or maybe, for example, what's that sport in the US? Mixed martial arts, right? Mixed martial arts is a big sport in the US that people watch. And for that mixed martial arts, most of the way it's run is they set up the platform, the players are signed on to them, they host the games, collect all the money, and pay players like salary, right? And they restrict everything that players do, which has become an issue. A lot of players are voicing out and are now coming up because usually what they do, from what is publicly known, is that they don't give their athletes the contracts, right? So you can't even take it to a lawyer to say, this is what I signed. Can you look at it? They just make you sign it. They keep all the copies. But people are coming out now to voice out. And then universally or globally, when people find out that, what is it called? The players that are even making you the money are not getting as much as you are getting, but you are keeping more of it. That becomes a problem. I think recently in one of these esports games, it became an issue. They were saying that children that were in that game were being exploited. because the platforms, the publishers were making all the money and just paying the children like peanuts. So I think they've gone to court with that case. I don't know if a decision has been made, at least the last time I've checked. But there's a huge, like there was a huge backlash, and people are saying, no, you can't exploit children. So the legal jurisprudence now for sports is that they're trying to come to a balance, both from decisions, from cases that have been decided. There's trying to be a balance with players or athletes as independent contractors, and either the platforms, leagues, federations that make money from these athletes. Because if the athletes or the players are not doing anything, then how will you make money? So I hope that answers your question, Marvelous.
Marvelous, does that answer your question?
Yes, man. Thank you so much.
You're
Okay.
welcome.
And if there are no other questions, I'd like to close the webinar for today and say, first of all, happy World IP Day to all of you. And I hope that this webinar has been very informative. I'd like to thank our collaborators, the Intellectual Property Law Club and the Sports and Entertainment Law Club of the Rivers State University for commemorating this World IP Day, right? So our speakers, we really appreciate you spending your Sunday afternoon with us. Sarah, the moderator, thank you as well. All the participants say thank you for spending your Sunday afternoon with us. And be on the lookout for more events that will be organized either by IPC, the IP Club, and the Sports and Entertainment Club. So yet to let Tiger Club to do so. And have a good afternoon.
Okay. Thank you very much, Rita. Thank you for inviting me and holding on for me. I'll then try to settle in now. Yeah.
Thank you. So you can watch a replay on the IPC YouTube channel for those that have missed out from the beginning of the webinar. Thank you again. Bye. Bye.